Perfect Edition translation comparison for the Stein and Sid arc. The worst pun about bullets is still unchanged. I continue to prefer the anime translation. Bonus coloured illustration. More inconsistent translation of the honorific coon. In the original translation they just left it as is. Now suddenly Blair is saying little soul, which again, like Kiddo in Kids chapter, it just seems like that should be a translation of Chan instead. In the first translation, this kind of love comedy. In the revised edition, this kind of rom-com, they correctly recognise that's the Japanese name for the same genre of movie. The excessively literal translation of Statue of Liberty as Goddess of Freedom statue is still there unchanged. Since the last episode I looked this up and yeah, that is literally what the Japanese word for Statue of Liberty means. But it's the name of the Statue of Liberty. I guess they just didn't recognise and they individually translated each word. But they did fix the inconsistent usage of sensei. Instead it's Mr. Sid, which is, what you'd actually call a teacher in English. The original has a unique font for Maka's despairing voice. I wonder why. Oh, didn't even notice this one when I was first reading. This weird line, "It's been a while, Deaf," when the character named Deaf is not on screen. The perfect translation fixes that up. It's apparently just a pun on ending sentences in desu, which is like a polite ending participle. Just doing a greeting while also making a pun on dying. That's now been changed to "It's been way too deathly long." Another genuinely bad decision. Like, how can you call yourself the perfect edition if you don't have the translation note saying what the kanji means on his headband, and also haven't translated the kanji, and also don't have a translation note section at the end of the manga? That's just one entire fun fact about the character that no one will have if they only read this version. I really like how they did the move name on this panel. Also, I only just noticed they consistently keep changing gravestone to headstone, and I don't understand what the motive is in doing that. Like, they're both basically synonyms for the same thing, and the only actual difference is I can guess they were being really pedantic, like, oh, it's technically not a gravestone if his body isn't actually entombed in the grave, if he's actually a zombie moving around. But that would make no sense as a thing that you have to correct in a translation. So, I don't know. Maybe they just thought it sounded cooler. They turned blabbering to jabbering. Okay, I guess that answers it. There must really be someone who's pathologically persnickety about words. Cool attack font again. What's interesting though is that the original translation page is kind of a medium state between what we saw in the earlier chapter and the final cool name font. They've got the colouring right, but it's still the same font as regular speech. Instead of just "that was fast" after Sid spills the beans seeing all the girls in their pervy underwear, it's instead been completely rephrased to "I was insta-killed," which it makes sense in context because it's in response to Soul saying, "I'm gonna think of a good idea to interrogate him," and then Black Star is "the idea is perversity." But I feel like it could have been better phrased, like "kill steal" might have been a better slang for this situation, like "you stole my thunder by doing it instead." But either way, it's a very modern slang to put into a manga, which, did they use insta-kill and kill steal back in the early 2000s? I feel that they did, and I feel like the era where we had like Pwned and Noobs and Leet. God, I've aged myself decades just by saying that. The wobbly font from Maka's despair earlier was used again for everyone apologising for being such disgusting perverts. And again, I'm not sure why they changed it. Like, maybe the motive was to be more dyslexia friendly, not having a font that's quite so unusual, but I feel like they could have done something. This particular font is not a good choice to symbolise the same emotion in a more readable way. It's really thin and small and doesn't fill out the bubble as much. I feel like maybe you could have handled it by having a readable font, but like wobbling around the letters so that they do still look a little bit skew-if in the bubble. I'm not sure if that is still hard to read with dyslexia. Whether it's about the letter shapes or how they're laid out. And actually, does anyone know any, like, dyslexia-friendly horror fonts? That would be cool. The font in Frankenstein's introduction box is now centered. Stein-kun was Death Scythe-kun's first partner. It looks so clunky when you cram multiple of them into the same text box, and you're not even communicating any additional information. Like, all we get here is that Lord Death is kind of casual in how he talks. He's saying kun instead of san for adult men. You can just get that through phrasing the way he talks casually in English, which you were already doing in every text box he's ever had. So yeah, in the perfect edition, those just aren't there. And that is all the changes for this chapter. A fascinating change in between chapters, though, is this is actually where the original volume release cut off. In the Perfect Edition, there's 2 more chapters, so this means all the original volume ending stuff here is completely exclusive to one version. I'll briefly go over it now. The original release ends partway through the Stein arc before revealing the big twist. Perfect Edition ends after it's all done. Perfect Edition also completely loses this cool preview splash page of random out of context panels of the next volume, which I think is weird, because why couldn't they just recreate this now with the next different chapter that is now next going to be happening? Instead, the Perfect Edition ends with nothing at the end. Just nothing. So here are the other some things that are gone. You are quite honestly not missing much. It's just a random funny gag manga with the author himself as his avatar. The joke is, welcome to the Asushi Yar, which is like, ending in Yar apparently means, it's how you say a bar in Japanese. It's a pun on the surname of the creator, turning into, here's my pub where I hang out and I tell you things about the manga. And then his avatar's name is also Usher, which is another second pun on his name. And like, that sounds cool in theory, but he doesn't really say anything actually about the manga. It's just jokes about things that make no sense out of context. Presumably these are all puns on other people he worked with in the office. We have the bodyguard Yu-san, who only says We have the Kehehe mouse, who spreads pestilence, which turns Usher into a bird when his sunglasses come off. And then they win, and then the bar gets shut down, and it ends. I think probably whatever joke is supposed to be happening here just couldn't translate. And I do understand why they wanted to remove these in the deluxe edition release. Maybe they don't still have the copyright to show these various co-workers he worked with. Maybe some of them don't work with him anymore and they didn't agree to also come back and be put in the new edition. Or maybe it's just, now this is even more removed from context, people will really not understand what's going on. Unless they happen to know the internal office politics of a place from 20 years ago. Oh, also interesting, the original release has a translation notes page. At least from the first volume I've read so far, the Perfect Edition does not have that. But to be fair, a lot of these things they did just actually translate rather than making you need a translation note. And it's kind of funny how basic some of these things are. I mean, this was the earlier days of anime fandom. They had to explain that nosebleeds indicate sexual arousement in anime. But what I think is nice, they have notes. Oh, this is who the real Al Capone was. This is who the real Mifune was. I guess Mifune is also based on a real person. And that real person is Toshiro Mifune, a Japanese actor who plays a lot of samurai movies. Neat. Oh, and apparently at least one of the confusing puns in the Asushi Yar page is a reference to the Japanese name for the thwack spell in Dragon Quest. Did this manga release before or after Dragon Quest VIII came out? Because that was the first time we had the revised attack names in English. So they might not have actually known what to translate it to. Nope, they have no excuse. The game came out 3 years before this English translated volume. Next chapter. The little splash page thingy has one change of Shinigami to Reaper. The font and location for all the other text has also changed. And the second coloured splash page after that has completely changed. The no loitering sign has not been translated in the panel, like all the previous handwritten things we saw, which seems to confirm my theory that the reasoning is indeed, if it's been written in a stylized way with a certain intent, we're going to leave it as is. Otherwise, if it's just plain text, it makes sense to translate it. The clunky Dr. Stupid line is exactly the same. The line about, you two can't resonate as opposed to you're having trouble resonating is also the same. That feels like an outright mistake that should have been corrected. The weird avant-garde line is replaced with a far-out conversation, which sounds so much infinitely more like how this man actually talks. Okay, I really don't get this change. They just made one random panel grammatically incorrect. I don't get how you can do that when you just have access to the same script and you can just copy and paste. But that guy can strike his opponent directly with his soul wavelengths, no weapon to channel it through necessary. It's not just me, right? That last part there feels weird. It feels like you spliced two sentences together in different tenses. And the original's just, that guy can strike his opponent with his soul wavelength without channeling it through a weapon. Which is perfectly correct and there is no motive to change that. Why did you do this? Did someone just have a very false idea about how English worked? Born in the future, I've kind of got a theory of what could happen here. It might have been a change to He can do that with his soul wavelength, no weapon necessary? And then the translator was like, oh, it still has to convey the full information that he is channeling his wavelength through the weapon. And then they edited that into the middle of a sentence and didn't get it. Now it's really clunky and you don't really get what it's trying to say. And that could be it. It could be like a typo, like that one infamous thing that happened in that game Kitty Love, where the word windowsill just suddenly appeared in the middle of a sentence. Because the previous text box had windowsill in it, and as far as we can tell, the translator just had that on their clipboard for copy and paste and messed up. It's one of the funniest errors I've ever seen in a video game, but that's entirely plausible. That could have been what happened here. Another little place where the replacement of the honorifics with different words didn't quite go as well. Like, we saw Sid Sensei being swapped out for Mr. Sid earlier, and that makes sense because that's what a kid would call their teacher. But when it's Lord Death himself saying it, it feels weird, right? Like, this is your boss. In Japanese, like, apparently it's just a normal way that you just say sensei for any teacher, regardless of whether you're above or lower than them in status. But in English, I don't know, like, you would only really say, like, oh, Mr. So-and-so. If it was a boss talking to you in a formal business meeting or giving you orders, it would feel more plausible, like, if it was just a casual conversation about the person when they're not even in the room, like, to just call them by their surname or something. Oh, Jennings from accounting, Thompson from the sales division. Like, you might refer to someone by their surname rather than their first name, but you wouldn't be that formal. And then again, at this point, they haven't revealed Sid's surname, so they couldn't have done that strategy, but if they just had him say Sid, it would make perfect sense of Lord Death's casual personality anyway. Oh, this is also a line I didn't even remark upon, seems weird in the manga in both translations and wasn't corrected. Black Star is brilliant at attacking with his soul wavelength, but the wielder isn't at quite the same level. That makes no sense, because you're not saying, oh, Black Star's weapon is really strong, but the wielder, Black Star, is not really strong. Like, when I first read this, I was like, are we calling Stein the wielder? Are we saying he's out of a higher level? I guess what they're kind of going for is the wielder of this move, the Black Star, Big Wave, Black Star. But it feels so clunky, you don't immediately clock that that's what it's trying to say. Because, like, I mean, the whole point of the thing is people wielding weapons. The guy wielding his move where he punches a man is just a strange phrasing. Oh, rare occasion where the original translation is the one that has the awkward sideways attack name, and a perfect edition is the one that moved it horizontally. But in this case, you can see exactly the problem I had with when the perfect edition does that, is you can see it reads from right to left in the original translation here. That's how you handle a vertical sideways text box like that. You don't want the reader to suddenly have to switch the order they're reading in to know what's going on. I'm not sure why they would have changed that. Slightly changing the panel order of the Hell No makes it even funnier. The chapter title does not have random quote marks around things. Another little bit of dialogue modified to be more Black Star-ese, I guess. Instead of saying Shinigami's son, he says the boss man's son. Another instance of a funny font for being depressed being replaced with nothing. Another instance of weirdly inserting modern day slang. Instead of saying the era is about to get shook up, he says the era is about to be shook. Why did you need to do that? The line was already fun and funny. It didn't need to just have one word removed to become relatable to the youths. Slurp sound effects changed to drool sound effect. This doesn't matter. And this version clarifies the weird joke about ball cloths. Ball bag rags. It's kind of like it's so specific it makes it not funny. But at least it's not confusing. Like, oh, bags from gym class when they get done in the laundry. It's just fundamentally not a funny joke in the first place. Black Star, you suck. But presumably that word is a shorter word in Japanese, so it might have been funnier there. And the clunky thing of saying exactly who's talking is still there in this version. I guess that was accurate for Japanese then. But awkward pun of Lord Death is also fixed. Whoa, it's Lord Death, dead and alive? It's also not very fun, but at least it's an actual play on a saying that makes sense. And then the perfect edition ends with another coloured chapter page. Oh, 2 of them. And I think this is the one we saw earlier in the regular manga. And as the end of the perfect edition, the end of the manga comparison, the end of all these videos I'm making right now, wrapping up with this chapter, which had no really interesting changes, to wrap up with being not a very interesting chapter and also not a very interesting episode. We are ending off on the lowest note possible.